So, the Chosen of the Wolf skin line has finally fully dropped with splash arts and models and everything. Well, not quite models. They're not in the 3D model viewer yet, which is what I kind of wanted to do to take a look at them. But we have the splash art in high resolution even. And of course, as always, we can count on good old skin spotlights to have us covered for at least a look at the models of these darn things. Now, I've already made my feelings clear about Chosen of the Wolf, that I'm not a fan of the way that they were included in the music video. I felt like they took away from the storytelling that was supposed to be about Ambessa and her particular story. That it was supposed to be about her and her feelings and how she sort of comes to reckon with death and the wolf and how she becomes herself. And then in the middle of all of that, we have these completely unrelated characters like Katarina, who at that point in Ambessa's life can't even have been born yet, like, much less be an assassin. And Swain and Pantheon, and like characters that just aren't relevant to Ambessa, but which are nonetheless they are taking up space because, well, it's advertising for yet another gold-covered skin line. Something I am also tired of in skins in League of Legends is the incessant obsession with gold. Like, it's so goddamn everywhere, especially when skins are supposed to be like, oh yeah, this is like the epic, powerful, super... Like, gold is used as an accent so often and so everywhere that it feels not like an aesthetic decision that the designers are making because, oh yeah, like, gold actually adds something here. Like, gold actually makes the... like, has a semiotic component. Gold actually does something interesting for the storytelling of this character. Gold is just there because, well, gold is, generically speaking, that's the cool metal that's powerful and prestigious and stuff. And that feels so much like we need this thing to look expensive so we can charge a lot of money for it. Like, that's what it's starting to feel like to me, where the gold has just become really boring to me. But we're going to put those complaints aside. I'm going to put aside my sort of arcane complaints about Ambessa. I'm going to try and put aside my instinctual dislike for the overuse of gold, and we'll try, I can't promise I'll be able to, but I'll try to take a look at these skins from a perspective of like, okay, let's try and assess them outside of those particular contexts. What have we got here? I guess we'll start with Pantheon. And I do like, I will say, I do like the way that his shape language is constructed here. I like the way that he looks on the Rift as a character. Like, the gold is overused, but gold and red, it's an evergreen combination for a reason, right? Like, this is visually striking. I think the white hair kind of doesn't work so well with it, because it's just kind of like, white and yellow are two colors that if you place them close together and you don't do a lot of values management to make them pop against each other, they will kind of blend. And I do kind of feel like that's what's happening here with Pantheon. Is like he has this shock of white hair that's just kind of blending into the helmet and doesn't really stand out clearly as a part of his character, which that's maybe a little bit of a pity. I might have gone, like, maybe a different hair, like black hair, for example, might have done a better job of standing out with him specifically. It looks good in the splash art. We'll take a look at the splash art in a second. But sort of in motion on the character itself, it's just not clear. Like, the white hair doesn't stand out as a feature. It just sort of blends, but yeah, whatever. Spell effects as usual. Like, I very rarely have anything bad to say about spell effects on Riot skins, because, like, it's like they have very good people working there. Like, occasionally they're too much, occasionally they're too loud, occasionally some champions, especially like the fancier skins, will have spell effects that I feel like are visually way too busy and like have too much stuff going on. But that's, you know, that's sort of the constant escalation of the business, right? Like, how do you keep selling these fucking legendary skins for the prices that you're selling them at? Well, you have to kind of ramp up how spectacular they look on the Rift, don't you? But yeah, no, like, Pantheon, I think, like, I really do like the helmet as a piece of like, shape on the character. Because, like Pantheon always has some, like, the thing with like, the flaming thing that comes out of his helmet. And that always looks pretty decent. I kind of like the hard-edged helmet on this skin here. I feel like that looks pretty good. Right, and that it gives like a nice sort of... It creates that shape you need on the top of the head of the character, the sort of like frame the anatomy of it. It's like the Pantheon one, yeah. The Pantheon, I think is pretty good. Let's bring him up here. And the splash art is, I mean, there are scars on him, but it is a thing with Riot that, like, even on characters where, like, Like, Pantheon is supposed... Like, a big part of his character is he has a giant fucking scar on his stomach, right? It's a thing that Riot does with a lot of their champions. Like, even the ones that are supposed to be scarred, that are supposed to be kind of crusty and kind of fucked up from, like, years of hard living and battle. The ones that are supposed, canonically, to be really fucking dirty, like Graves. Like, Graves is supposed to be a character who, like... He takes a bath if you force him to, right? He washes his he does his laundry if you force him to. He's really not supposed to be... This model still has some awkwardness with the... It's because I'm using webcam tracking, and sometimes the webcam struggles to make sense of what it sees. Spaghetti fingers. Like, Graves is supposed to be a character who, like, this guy barely showers, right? Like, this guy doesn't trim his beard. This guy doesn't take care of his clothes. He's supposed to be dirty. He never is, right? And it's much the same thing with a character like Pantheon here, like, where the lore of Chosen of the Wolf is a little bit like, these are supposed to be, like, godlike demigod beings that are sort of in this special realm of death. So it makes sense that he would, like, be well-maintained, right? Like, that his gear, his clothes would all be, like, impeccably oiled and looked up. But here's the thing, I feel like the scarring could be... You know, I shouldn't have to zoom in this far in order to see the scars on him, right? Like, that feels like a lost opportunity for character storytelling. But again, it is a Riot thing. Like, I don't know if there's a market where they have specific censorship rules that, like, characters aren't allowed to be visibly super scarred in, like, a way that... Because then it qualifies as gore or something. I don't know if there's a specific censorship rule, or if it's just because... Or if it's like a cultural taboo where in some cultures maybe having scars is seen as an ugly disfigurement, something shameful, which, like, even if this is so, like, surely that's worth pushing back against, but maybe not when you want to sell a skin. As a piece of character design, like, I like it. Like, I think it looks cool. Like I said, I think it looks pretty damn good on the Rift. I think the red cape and the gold shield is, like, putting aside my disdain for gold, looks very great. But also... not a very interesting character in Swain here, right? Like, there's not a lot. He looks like the mid-boss of an MMO dungeon, right? Like, he looks like you get into, like, the middle of a raid and, like, this is the guy you fight. He doesn't look like he has much of a personality. He doesn't look like he's got anything going on. That's in part, like, on purpose. Like, you have the helmet, which anonymizes him very badly, right? Which is part of the point of a helmet like that, is that it's supposed to anonymize the character and take away some sense of their humanity. Here, though, in part because his clothes are so immaculate and perfect, and I don't really get the sense that the tattoos and the markings have anything to do with his personal culture. It's like, okay, so who is this character? He is Shield McSpear guy. The guy who stabs you with his spear and bashes you with his shield. Like, I don't get a lot of sense of personality from this character. Like, that's not necessarily a huge problem. That seems to be intentional on part of the skin, that he's, like, not really supposed to be a person as such. He's supposed to be an embodiment of something. And fair enough, but it means I just don't get interested in him. Like, he looks cool. I just find it difficult to feel interested in him. Katarina is one I don't know why. Like, well, I know why she was chosen. She's an Noxian character. She has associations with, like, death and surviving death, and, like, walking on the knife's edge between life and death. Like, she's this cocky, overconfident, right? So I can see thematically why Katarina would be chosen for the skin line. That said, I don't, like, it's sort of a problem with Katarina in general, is that, like, there's only really so much you can really do with her. Because she's a lady, like, well, it's not really knives anymore. She's just holding swords. But she's a lady with 2 swords and leather pants who's, like, a very uninteresting assassin kind of character, right? Like, so it's hard to do a lot with it. Battle Queen did a good job, like, just specifically by making her swapping her weapons, like, a big part of her character. I think that added a lot of interesting creative sort of expression to the character, like, that her weapons were, like, more of an expression of who she is as a person. Again, like Katarina works well with the natural red of the skin line. Red and gold, as ever, always like a solid combination. I don't know about all the exposed skin. Again, kind of from the perspective that being sort of a bright cream color, it just kind of blends with the gold. It makes the armor stand out less on her. It makes it less interesting. The black, I think, is a very good contrast with both the gold and the red. I don't know about the exposed skin. Like, if she's supposed to be having the exposed skin, I would have liked the tattoos to be more powerfully visible then. Because because as it stands there, like, they're barely visible on her. And that's the thing, like, if you had the pure red tattoos, maybe that would blend too much with the hair, who knows? I don't know if it really works. It doesn't seem to be fan service either. Like, it doesn't really seem to be that they made Katarina this naked for sexy reasons. Particularly, like shoulders are nice and all that, but I don't, like, I don't think a lot of people are gonna sit up and go, "Woo, bare shoulders, mama, you're being daring tonight." I don't really think that's much of a thing. I think the sex appeal for this particular skin splash is found a lot more right there. I think that's kind of where they put that, with this like toned, athletic, not very thick, but like athletic little butt shot. Which is like, and that's a sort of a tiresome thing about some of the splash arts, is like they try very hard to, and we'll talk about this when we get to Swain, by the way, they try very hard to get characters into positions that are like, because like the splash art is in part the sales pitch, right? Like the splash art is like the first thing you see about the champion. This is how Riot tells you how they're going to sell this to you. Like, why should you buy this? Why is this cool? And that's where sex sells, right? Like, sex sells is a fallacy. It's not true as a general truism. It's a very, very circumstantial thing. Sex only sells things that are supposed to be sexy, right? Like, if you go to buy a washing machine, right, and there's an ad with a hot lady with her bosom out, and it's like, oh, cool new washing machine, like, that's gonna catch your attention. You're gonna look at the ad. That's what like sex can do. But you're not gonna go, oh, I can choose between the washing machine that is clearly labeled to be very energy efficient and like really good at doing the laundry, or there's the one with the sexy lady on it. I'm gonna pick the one with the sexy lady because I'm a fucking moron. Like, that's not how it works, right? Like, what sexuality and stuff can do for advertising is grab attention, right? And that's working less and less, by the way. Even that is kind of not really true anymore because there's so much of it. Everyone in the world is completely fucking desensitized to it, so it doesn't work nearly as well as the truism would have you believe. But anyway, the point is, for skin splash arts, right? Like, part of it is get someone to stop and say, whoa, right? And that's kind of why they go for these, like, there's sort of two modes you really get with splash arts, and it's either like sort of sex appeal or coolness appeal, right? It's like either this character is really cool, this character is really cool, this character is like badass, this character is powerful, or else this character is super hot, right? If you put this skin on, you will be either badass or you will be super hot, right? Like, that's what you'll be communicating by wearing this cosmetic. And it's a little, like, it reproduces that typical pattern, right? Which is not Riot's fault, but it's something they're participating in, of sort of like how do we make a woman appealing as a character? They sort of go for sex first a lot more often than they go for power, right? Like, it's reversed with guys. Like, how do we make guys appealing? They go for power first before they go for sex. Not always. Again, we will talk about Swain later. But it is one of those things, like, I feel like with this character, where she's supposed to be like this death-dealing sort of like avatar of like a strange and like bloodied death realm of kindred, the idea is there in that we have her sort of like presiding over a field of corpses. That, like, as a concept, that's solid. I feel like there's a more compelling, interesting way to pose that. I feel like there's a more compelling, interesting way to do the storytelling of, like, okay, she slaughtered all of these people. How did she do it, right? How did she do it? Something where she's sitting on top of, like, a suit of armor that's, like, empty. You can't show gore that much in splash arts, but, like, on top of a suit of armor that's empty, like, with a knife stuck inside of it. And, like, you can still have her do, like, an ass pose in something like that. Something that does a little bit more of telling the story of, like, how is this character badass, right? How did this character do all the killing? This is just, she's just standing there, right? She's just standing there, she's showing off her ass, like, the light is quite literally highlighting her ass, and that's kind of it. And I feel like you could do more with the idea, like, even if she's supposed to be like Cheesecake, even if it's supposed to be fan service, you could do more with the idea of a super sexy, like, Death Realm murder assassin character. Again, as a character design, I don't really understand the bare shoulders at all. I don't really get it. I don't get the bare shoulders and then the iron, like the metal gauntlets and like the corset thing. I don't, even as a piece of sex appeal, I don't really get this. Like, because the reason why she's not fully armored is she's supposed to look agile. That makes perfect sense. But then why do the thing over, like, having choosing to armor just her arms, like, that feels unwieldy and kind of weird. I feel like there are ways you could sort of do that better with some sort of Final Fantasy-ass elaborate armor work. Like, sort of, because, like, if you're gonna do bare arms, I would rather that they do bare arms all the way down and then have her wear, like, gloves. So, like, that the tattoos are the stars of the show, right? Like, that are running down her arms, like these blood-red tattoos that pulse with power or whatever, that they would be the star of the show. And then, for the armoring, I would instead focus on, like the corset thing. Okay, cool. Then maybe we can extend that into some more leg armor on her a little bit. Maybe just a little bit more, because like thighs make sense as a piece of fan service, right? But something that like runs around her legs or maybe accentuates the thighs, or just titty armor. Like if fan service is what you're going for, then I'd rather that. Like the gauntlets on the arms feel a little, it feels a little bit like they're going for some Malenia Elden Ring stuff, right? Like it feels like they're trying a little bit to run for the Malenia Elden Ring appeal, but it just misses. It just doesn't quite get there for me. It feels a little bit like disoriented, like it doesn't quite know what it wants to be. Like, does it want to be like this Death Valkyrie warrior figure, or does it want to be Cheesecake? And it's not really doing a good job of choosing a lane to run in. And so for me, this just kind of falls a little bit flat. Let's see. Kindred, though. Oh my fucking god. Let's start with a splash art on that one, actually, because fucking Hozier, like, or Hozure, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but like fucking, what a fucking artist. Like, he's done a bunch of Kindred splash arts, and he's getting really good at them. What a fucking splash art. Like, I like the choice of the Dutch angle. So the Dutch angle as a piece of composition is like, do you want your point of view to feel destabilized? Do you want your point of view to feel uncertain? Like, do you want to add a sense of unease or a sense of being unbalanced to a scene? Dutch angle is like a really good shortcut to do that, right? And so over top of that, we have this play with light and shadow, right? Like, we have this very bright, like, pure white light that's sort of shining in from behind here, but it's not actually illuminating the character. Kindred themselves are in shadow, as they want to do. The only bit of actual highlighting we have on Kindred is on Lamb, well, Wolf Lamb, because they're sort of playing with the idea of this is a much more wolf-centric incarnation of Kindred. It's only really here on the leg, right? There's very little actual natural light that reaches Lamb themselves, or Kindred themselves. And so instead you get, like, this play with, like, blood red and black and, like, shadows and glow that, like, outlines the character really, really nicely. And it's dangerous territory to play in, because, like, if you don't manage the values of that shit correctly, the splash art is going to end up looking incomprehensible. Like, it's going to end up looking dark and muddy, and, like, it really does run the risk of that in some places, where, like, here, like, with the hand holding the bow and, like, the straps around the thighs, and, like, this sort of thigh armor that Kindred has got on Lamb's hips. The armor that Lamb has got on their hips there. This is, like, a lot of detail that does kind of muddy away inside the shadows. This is a lot of detail that does kind of just poof, vanish a little bit inside of the shadows. And it's a valid criticism, I think. The payback you get for that, though, like, the benefit you get out of that is that you get to really, really highlight the eyes of both characters, right? You get to highlight that big red demonic hand that's sort of, like, reaching out almost as though it's offering something, almost as though it's saying, come, right? Like, come to me. Like, either come to me quietly, or else, you know, Wolf is gonna get to feed. That sort of, you get that little sense of storytelling, right? Like, that this is Kindred having a moment with whoever is observing them, right? Being offered a choice between either you come with me quietly, or else, you know, or else this. Classic way to, like, render a jagged light in the eyes. Like, so much scribbling going on around. Like, oh, what a cool fucking splash art. And I do like the play with light and shadow here that we make, like, because with most splash art, like, we talked about that with Katarina, right? The splash art here is making a very specific like decision to highlight her ass, quite literally by putting light on her ass, right? And like on the back along here, like it's highlighting the character specifically. Same thing with Pantheon, right? Like a lot of the light falls on Pantheon, like a lot of the gold, like there's a lot of highlighting on him. Kindred, not so much, right? Like very little highlighting on Kindred. But in return, you get like, the colors really get to play here. The colors really get to be important to the composition, right? Like the color and the glowing light from the character themselves. So this feels much more like the scene is bathed in their power, right? Like this feels like much more like the scene is within their power, that they're the ones controlling what we get to see here. It's like as a piece of visual storytelling, this is menacing, this is scary, this is intimidating, and just the play with proportion and size as well, right? Like you have Lamb herself, who's like scary enough with this fucking wolf mask that she's got on, right? And like all this jagged Noxus shit that's going on. But then the scale of Wolf, right? The sheer size of Wolf as this like horrifying inevitability that's just hovering in the background. Like, oh, what a fucking splash art. That's really fucking good. In game, this is the thing about like sort of visual values, right? I would have liked it a lot better if Lamb's fur was pure black here. I completely understand why they can't do that on the in-game model, both for readability reasons. Like, yeah, that would get muddy, and it would make it harder for Lamb to stand out against Wolf. I can completely understand it. It is still a thing of like, I wish she wasn't gray. I wish she was darker. I wish it was more like a really playing with pitch black and blood red and gold, and like those were the three only primary colors that we're working with here. Because like that's still here. Like Lamb is still gray in this splash art. I completely recognize that. It's just, as a piece of character design, I kind of wish Lamb was pure black here, to really emphasize the idea that this is Lamb if Lamb was like 100% influenced and identified with the wolf aspect of the kindred, rather than having any of the gentility of Lamb, right? Or innocence, indeed. Like, it's one of those things, like, a pure black character with all of this red and the gold, like, that would have fucking, I think that would have fucking banged. I understand why they can't do that. It's just a pity. In-game, a little less cool looking than the splash art, but that's kind of how it's supposed to be, right? Like, they're not supposed to be as cool in-game as they are in the splash art. It's hard, it's usually not possible to achieve. Wolf's visual effects here do disappoint me, because Wolf doesn't really feel like this body that sort of emerges out of a shadow and sort of it's just a head, right? This is just a floating skull. This is a Castlevania enemy, right? In one of the clock tower stages that sort of flies along and knocks you off something and kills you instantly. It doesn't look intimidating. Wolf doesn't really get to look scary here. I don't think the visual effects do enough of a good job of sort of extending the idea that you're seeing a small portion of like a huge dark body that's sort of fading out of the realm of death and becoming visible to you. Unfortunately. It's one of those things that's really difficult to manage in-game with like how many visual effects and how much visual effect you add to a character, because you don't want to imply a hitbox, you don't want to imply like again, gameplay reasons why I think it makes sense. It's just disappointing. Generally, like, Kindred is one of the cooler characters in the game as a piece of animation, certainly. Like, I love Kindred's animation. It does, I do wish I had the model viewer, because I want to see what Kindred's run animation especially looks like from a regular perspective in here, because like one of the problems that Porcelain Kindred had was that her skin design just did not account. Like, the basic animation design, the basic model and rigging design for Lamb does not account for human anatomy. Like, it just does not work with a human anatomy. It needs that inhuman furry anatomy that allows for a lot more squash and stretch, a lot more messing around. And it has caused problems before. I think this model is probably close enough to Kindred's base anatomy that it isn't gonna be a problem for Kindred in-game with this skin, but it's something I would love to take a look at. I would love to take a look at how Kindred's run animation especially, and a lot of their animations work with the way that this skin looks. Because like the sharper shape language on like the mask especially, like the mask is smaller on Lamb here than it usually is, in order to make more room for like the main and like with sharper details and shit like that, it creates a very different feeling. Like it messes a little bit with the proportions of Lamb in a way that I think like makes her look very different. I don't think different enough to be a readability problem, but like that is a very cool looking skin. Like the color scheme here is great. I still wish the fur could have been pitch black. I do wish it. Like I kind of wish that it was like Lamb was pitch black and maybe Wolf here had like the bright gray sort of whiter. But again, I understand why they wouldn't do that. I'm just waffling. Like it's a really, really cool skin. I can see a few ways where if it wasn't constrained by the needs of League of Legends as a piece of gameplay, you could make it better, but, you know, whatever. Swain now. Oh, Swain. Where, like, your prestige, man. Oh, boy. Again, we have the same problem with that we have with Pantheon, where I think the white and the gold just can't quite distinguish themselves from each other well enough. I think it blends. I think it morphs into one another in a way that just isn't very clear, and that runs the risk of messing with the shape language of like the collar and like the stuff that Swain's model is doing here, in a way that I feel like is a pity. There's a bunch, I feel, partly because Swain has that like giant military overcoat thing going on by default. This feels like the most 40k of, well, maybe not 40k, maybe more Age of Sigma, of the skins. It feels like the most Warhammer of the skins in a lot of ways, and I don't begrudge that at all. I don't mind that influence, and I do like what they've done with his demon wings here. That they're sort of like fucking Game of Thrones it, like formed it out of like these broken weapons and shit like that have sort of discarded on the battlefield. That's a very cool idea. I do wish he was more monstrous. Like, I really do wish that his demon form here was one where he literally, like, takes on the aspect of the wolf, right? Like, he grows fur and sort of gains, like, a wolf aspect to him rather than just being shirtless, right? Like, that feels like a missed opportunity for a really cool monstrous transformation rather than just taking his shirt off. Again, maybe there's probably a lot of gameplay technical reasons why they couldn't just do that. Spawning a fur texture on him, maybe that's just not a thing that's really technically possible in there, or maybe they just didn't want to, right? Like, clearly a big part of the concept of this Swain is, like, he's shirtless, and it's so tedious. In a sense, like, it's the same problem that we'll talk about the Prestige version later. It's the same problem that exists when, like, I hate it when characters default to something without putting thought and care and interest into why that features on the character. Like, what is it supposed to do for them? How is it supposed to inform them? How is it supposed to, like, further some part of their storytelling or anything? And with the fucking shirtless man characters that Riot have been doing a fucking lot recently, and with, like, the cheesecake ladies who are sexy and stuff, it so rarely feels like anything that's meant to do or mean anything about who they are as characters, and it's just, sex sells, right? Like, it's just that tedious little trope that isn't really quite true, because it's like, yeah, no, like, you're definitely gonna catch some people's attention with this, but at the cost of what, exactly? Of making the character much less distinct and interesting. Like, because, like, we have the shirtless fucking one in this skin line already. That's Pantheon, and with Pantheon it makes sense. He's playing in that Spartan 300 nonsense that he's always playing around in, right? Like, that's where, again, Spartans wouldn't actually have been quite as shirtless as they looked in 300, or indeed nearly as ripped, because that's a gym body, and that's not what you look like if you're actually doing feats of strength for a living. That's not the point. It's just, like, why is Swain shirtless here? Like, what does that, like, with the Prestige, it sort of makes sense, like, oh, we got the titties out because sex appeal, we want to sell this thing as, like, hot and sexy. Fine. What does it do for this version of the character? Like, if this is, like, the conquering Swain who's, like, in the realm of death, sort of like being an avatar of death and destruction, what does it do for him to be shirtless? To have the titties out? I guess show off the tattoos, right? Except, again, if you look on the in-game model, not really that prominent. Like, because of the glow inside of his chest, the tattoos don't really get to stand out that well against his skin. It just kind of looks like blood veins. Like, it doesn't really look like an interesting sort of visual design or anything like that. It's like, so, like, I don't think it does a very good job. If the point is to show off the tattoos, it's not. It's to be sex appeal. But if it was to show off the tattoos, I don't think it works here. I think the tattoos need something darker, or they need a better canvas to stand out against, especially with his coat sort of constantly interfering with it. Like, I would kind of have liked if instead, like, maybe the tattoos were, like, branded as sigils all the way up and down his coat, so you have this pitch black coat with, like, these red tattoo symbols running up it, like, maybe something like that. Again, within the lore of the skin line, maybe the tattoos are meant to represent something very specific. I don't really know. It vaguely looks like the demon language, that Riot uses for its, like, demonology, which, like, yeah, okay, cool. But, not really 100% sure. I do like the coat, though. Like I said, this feels in many ways like the most sort of Warhammer-esque of all of the designs. And I really like the big crown motif with, like, the collar there, like crown and bird feathers at the same time. That's quite cool. I think this thing is very, very silly, but again, thinking of it from a Warhammer angle, in a way that's, like, over the top in the right way. I like the claw hands. Even on the demon arm, I kind of think the claw hands add something there. I think that's pretty cool. The coat, like, with the black and the gold is, like, yes, that works. Again, hate gold on principle, but, like, as a thing here, I think it really works. Like, I like the big sort of fur accent that's been hung on. Again, that aspect of the wolf, right? Like, I would have assumed if he had the coat with, like, the big furry sort of arms, as it were, hanging off it, that would mean that he would do a wolf transformation, right? Like, that he would transform into, like, a wolf monster, werewolf-ish transformation sort of thing for his ult. They're not really doing that, and but, like, as a whole design, it's pretty good. The shirtlessness doesn't do anything for him. I don't think it adds anything for Swain to be gym ripped. Sort of like, yeah, babe, I pump iron, I do my fucking calisthenics, I have a sick CrossFit routine. That doesn't do anything for Swain. Right? For other characters, it does add something. Like, for other characters, it can add something to the sex appeal. I don't think it adds that much to the sex appeal for Swain. Like, even if you were trying to do this as, like sort of horny, sexy fan service, that's not really Swain's niche. He doesn't really appeal to people because he's fucking ripped. He appeals to people because he's a domineering, scheming, condescending, like, emotionally intelligent old man, right? Like, he's an experienced older man who, like, knows the ways of the world, knows exactly what he wants, who can tell you to get on your knee. Like, that's the appeal of Swain, is that he's that character. It's not that he's Mr. Goes to the gym 8 days a week, right? It's not that he's super ripped and that he has like rock hard abs or whatever. It's that it's his persona that's the attractive thing about Swain. That's what makes him horny. That's what makes him sexy. That's why people want to fuck Swain. This stuff is not really Swain. Like, that's not really his bit to be this. Like, other characters have that, but not Swain. I don't think it adds anything to him, which brings us to fucking Prestige, right? Let's start with the in-game one, because I feel more positively about the in-game one. Like, I like the black hair as a piece of the in-game one. I like the big fur coat collar on the coat. Like, that's a really classic sort of, like, braggadocious showing off. Like, here is me, like, fucking look at me. I'm here. I'm the alpha dog, as it were, of this social gathering. Like, pay attention to me, look at me. That all works for me. I don't know, like, the armor is supposed to be crystal. I don't think that comes across really well. Again, there's this blending issue where the white coat blends into the crystal too much, so that it either looks like he's wearing a glove, or else it looks a little bit too much like his coat is, like, extending over into it, or something like that. It doesn't 100% work. Like, and they try to do something about that, right? Like, with the... Like, they could do something about that by giving him, like, some dark sleeves or something, like by some kind of dark, like, gradient on the coat arms that sort of go into the crystal arm. I don't not 100% think it works. Like, I really think it... Here, his arm should have been naked, so the transition into the crystal arm could have been clearer. But as a whole thing, like, Swain looks good. Like, I think this is pretty fucking drippy, genuinely. I think this is pretty fucking cool. It doesn't look that much like Swain is the problem, but I think it's pretty fucking cool. I like the colors on this thing. I like the use of black as like a means to offset the contrast of this thing. I like the sort of spiky, half Noxian, sort of half high fashion nonsense that he's got going on there. His wings look pretty fucking cool in this version as well. Let's see if we can find the R here somewhere. Oh, is that a wolf mask on his vision? Oh, that's pretty cool. Nice visual effect. right? And here we get the transformation I was kind of looking for from the base skin, which is like a more, like, putting on the wolf mask, all of a sudden sort of seems to grow fur around his chest. Like, that, the sort of werewolfy coded transformation was what I was looking for from the base skin. I don't understand why it's not there. But this fucking the world ends with you ass wing design thing for his ult is like, it's cheesy, it's over the top, it's kind of lame, but in a cool way, if you know what I mean. I like it. Like, I'm not Mr. Fashion exactly, but I kind of like this. I think this is the right kind of fucking anime-ass Final Fantasy over-the-top bullshit to make something that's as loud and cocky as this work. But, like, the fucking... How does his base skin not have the werewolf transformation, though? How does his base skin not transform into a wolf monster when he uses his ult? How the fuck did that not happen? How did that only happen in the Prestige? I don't understand that. I genuinely don't. Anyway, this doesn't look like Swain. That's not Swain. Swain is not who that is. That's not Swain. That doesn't look like Swain. I'm sorry. It fucking doesn't. Like, no way in hell. This doesn't that much either, I will say, but, like, it's ameliorated a lot by the fact he's wearing this crown that's kind of half hiding his face anyway. But this isn't Swain. This doesn't look like Swain. At all. Kind of. It looks like... What the fuck's the name of Swain's pirate skin? It looks like that. It looks like Swain's pirate skin, right? And the thing about... I don't mind that Swain has the pirate skin that turns him into, like, a younger, more handsome... Like, well, not more handsome, less handsome, frankly. But turns him into a younger sort of version of himself where he's, like, a swashbuckling pirate, sort of, like... Where kind of part of the fantasy is that he's, like, this sexy, swashbuckling, untrustworthy pirate guy who's gonna, like... rip your bodice and, like, shiver your timbers and all that. Like, that all makes sense as, like, a sort of sex appeal, sex fantasy. But Riot, you guys know that people want to fuck the old man, right? You guys know that part of the point of Swain is that he's fucking old. Is that he's a silver fox daddy, right? You know that part of the point is that he isn't in any way, shape, or form young. Right? Because this fucking with the beard and the and by the way, what's with his grooming here? By the way, like, what are we supposed to take from this? He has this perfect, immaculate mustache, right? Like, which is clearly, he clips it, he plucks it, he takes care of it, and then he also has fucking all the way down his neck? I'm sorry, you have to make it... Is this guy grooming himself or isn't he? Does he have a serious grooming routine where he really takes very careful care of his body hair, or doesn't he? Make a choice. You can't have it fucking both ways. This doesn't make any sense. Like, commit to a character, honestly. Like, is he plucking his fucking eyebrows, or are they scrunkly? Like, make a decision on that one. This doesn't look like Swain. It just simply doesn't. It just doesn't look like Swain. I don't recognize this character as Swain. I really don't. And it's supposed to be fucking fan service, right? This is supposed to be hot, sexy-ass fan service. First of all, giving him his white hair. I understand why you don't want white hair on this character because you have the big white fur collar, right? As a piece of, like, dealing with values and stuff, absolutely makes sense. But, like, it doesn't look like Swain anymore. Like, you've taken away the hair color. You've taken away his, like... Because Swain, in-game, base Swain, is meticulously clean-shaven, right? Like, that's part of his character, is that he's this fucking, like, not mind control, but, like, puppet master Caesar character who rules Noxus with an iron fist, who's always in total control of everything. So his hair is immaculately controlled, he's always clean-shaven, like, his look, his outfit, it's all perfectly on point and perfectly controlled, because that's who he is as a character. This wild hair shit, right? And the fucking, like, the beard hair growing all the way down his neck beard shit, and, like, the hairy chest and stuff. That's all stuff that's sort of supposed to say, oh, this man is a wild man. He's a rough man, right? Like, like, it's all stuff that's sort of supposed to be, like, alpha-coded, right? That's supposed to be, like, this, like, passionate and, like, uncontrolled and dangerous. And the same thing with the big fur coat. And, like, this is a mane, right? It's like a lion's mane. It's like a big sort of wolf mane, like the big wolves have. That's what it's supposed to be, right? So this is all rough and, like, wild and untamed and shit. But that's not what people want about Swain. Like, the point of Swain is that he is so fucking in control of everything and so meticulous about everything all the time. This is the opposite of that. And that, okay, like, maybe you want to present an alternate fantasy for the skin, I guess, but then why not just give it to Draven? Why not just give it to Silas? Like, Silas is this character. Silas fits this perfectly. This is Silas, right? Like, Silas is the character whose fantasy is about uncontrolled, wild, passionate, rageful, dangerous in that sense, right? Swain isn't that. Swain is about, like, total, perfect, like, unbroken, unbreakable control. And the thing about it is the rest of the fashion says that, right? This suit, well, it's asymmetrical. It's sort of playing with the, like, the suit kind of says that. The crystal arm kind of says that. The gold accent on the fingers kind of says that. Like, these very geometric sort of sigils sort of floating behind him, they all say that. It's just, it's incoherent. Like, what are you going for here? Is this guy perfect, in control, like, toxic male manipulator daddy? Is that what you're going for? Or are you going for, like, werewolf-coded alpha wild man guy who's, like, gonna rip your clothes off and growl in your ears? Like, which fantasy is it? It's not committing to either one. It's mixing them together in a way that I think is kind of incoherent, honestly. And I will say, it's not that it doesn't look good. It all looks good. This is a fucking gorgeous splash art. I like that they have painted some skin texture onto Swain here, that you actually get a little bit of sense of aging on his character model. I do like that. It's not old enough. I think it's de-aged in a way that I like. That really, again, the point of Swain is that he's old. That's the point. That's like, people want to fuck him because he's old. Because he's an old silver fox daddy. Like, he's not supposed to look like he's in, like, his mid-50s. He's supposed to look like he's cresting 70. It really does annoy me when it's this thing of, like, there is a very specific horny sex fantasy that you could pander to, right? There is one. But you've chosen to pander to a completely different one instead, rather than use the strengths of the character for what they're for. Again, this skin would have worked so much better on a Draven or a Silas, because they're characters who are designed to make this work. With Swain, all I'm thinking is, like, this contradicts Swain, but then it also plays pretend as though it is Swain, but then it isn't Swain. I find it incoherent, right? And this has nothing to do with whether or not it's hot, right? Like, you can look at this and you go, fuck, I want to fuck that guy, right? Like, this is hot, this is sexy, I want to get on my knees for that. Absolutely, that's valid. I'm not quibbling with any of that, whether you should find it hot or not. I'm saying, as a piece of fantasy, as a piece of fan service, as something that's designed to be horny and to appeal to a certain kind of horniness, I think it's incoherent. I think it is stuck between trying to play two fantasies at the same time, and it would have been better if it had committed to either one. And the one to commit to, because it's Swain, is the one of, like, immaculate control. Of an old man in immaculate control who knows what you want before you have even said it, right? Like, who knows every single button he could possibly push to manipulate you and get what he wants from you in, like, a really sort of toxic, mean, but also very horny way. That's what Swain is built for. That's what he's good at. That's kind of what you should play to the strengths of, rather than half transforming him into a Silas character who is, like, this rageful, passionate, sort of unbridled, uncontrolled mass of complexes and traumas and anger issues and stuff like that results in, like, him being this unpredictable, passionate wild man character, right? Because that's what all of the hair grooming and, like, the hair on the thing and, like, the asymmetry in the suit and, like, the big fur collar, that's what all of that says. But then all the rest of it says immaculate control, total, like, I don't think it gels. I just don't think this gels. I don't think it works together the way that it's supposed to. And it annoys me. It annoys me. I wish it did. I wish it did work together, because, like... And also the fucking werewolf transformation. I genuinely cannot believe that they did not put the werewolf transformation on the base Swain. I cannot believe that. I don't understand. Let's finish up with the star of the show, as it were, which is Ambessa. She's the one who got the music video. She's the one, this skin line is supposed to be her launch skin. It's supposed to tie into some part of her characterization. She's the one this is supposed to be all about, so let's take a look at what she looks like. And, I mean, it's... I think they managed the white and gold a lot better with Ambessa, right? Like, here, I think because it's reasonably well separated, like, most of the gold is, like, on her chest, on, like, on her hips, on her arms, but then they keep, like, the upper body fairly free of it, the white hair gets to, like, hold that value position, right? Like, there's still gold in there that sort of blends in with it uncomfortably, but not in a way that I think is detrimental. Like, I think it works as a whole piece. With the thing, I'm not much a fan of the splash art, actually, but we'll get to that later. As a thing on, like, as a launch skin, yeah, like, I can't remember. Is this the one that's legendary? I think this might be the legendary of the bunch. Which, I don't know that was necessary. I don't understand really why you would give Ambessa the legendary right away. I think Kindred was a much better choice in this lineup for a legendary, or Swain for that matter, because maybe with a legendary's budget you could have had the full werewolf transformation on the fucking alt or whatever. I don't know that this one needed to be a legendary in order to carry off its concept. I do like the color transformation. I do like it, well, halfway. I don't know about the visual effects over it. I think the visual effects maybe get a little bit too much. I kind of wish the visual effects... Like, and again, this is a gameplay thing, right? Like, the visual effects have to be very, very clear so that you know what state the character is in, right? Like, what powers the character has access to. I don't know if that actually ties in with her buffs or whatever, but I presume that's why. I think the red overpowers the gold a little bit too much in the visual effects. I wish the gold shone through more clearly in her visual effects, so that we got that bright contrast between, like, blood red and gold and, like, the dark colors on the rest of her a little bit more strongly separated on the character rather than being so mixed as they are. As a whole, like, it's not a legendary that particularly excites me. I don't think the gauntlets are very interesting. The gauntlets in particular feel like they needed a little bit more cooking, because, like, they feel less powerful than her base gauntlets, actually, to me. And that's a bit of a problem, because, like, this is supposed to be her in an empowered state. They feel a little bit more dinky. They feel a little bit more small and actually weak, kind of. I feel like the gauntlets are a miss. I feel like they needed something more to them to make them feel stronger, like more of a source of power for her. But yeah, like, I don't know. I don't have really strong feelings. Oh, that's a pretty cool animation, actually. I like that. That's very cool. I don't know what she's surfing on. I think maybe she should... That doesn't matter. But, like, as a home guard, that's pretty funny. That's quite cute. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this, actually. I came into this with much more positive feelings about it, but now that I'm looking at it, I'm kind of like... This doesn't really feel coherent. Like, especially the visual effects, especially all that fucking red glow that keeps overpowering the whole color palette of the character. That's maybe a little bit of a miss from the visual effects there. I feel like... And again, I don't know what the gameplay communication that they're trying to do here is, if it's very, very necessary to have that glow to show the person you're playing against what Ambessa has up, what she has active. Maybe that's why. I feel like the visual effects overpower the entire skin too much here. The idea of the black and the red and the gold, like, especially that she gets darker as she gets more powerful, right? Like, she leans more into her strength and her power. That's very cool. But yeah, I don't know. Because, like, as a splash art, I'm not actually that much of a fan. She gets the most action-oriented of all the splash art. Like, she's the one we get to see actually properly doing something, fighting someone. Pantheon, like, yeah, he's technically in combat, but what's his enemy? It's this shadow that's, like, out of the screen over here. Oh, there's debris flying everywhere, but, like, there's not really any sense of him being in combat. It's more like he's just kind of holding up a shield and going, no, as that guy over there, something unseen does something or other. Ambessa is the one who gets to actually, like, oh shit, she has adversaries. Like, she has people she's actually fighting. She's actually doing her fucking moves. I like that. Like, that sort of sells the power fantasy of this version of the character to me much more clearly. Something's funky about the way the face is rendered here, though. I don't know if it's because of, like, the shiny gold value that's coming in here. I don't know if maybe the face looks a little bit too thin. It just doesn't land for me. The expression here, the face posing, the way that the head is tilted relative to what the body is doing, it doesn't 100% work for me, unfortunately. I don't know that I can articulate 100% why. This just feels off. It doesn't quite land. Like, for one thing, it doesn't feel angry enough. Like, if this is supposed to be M-Bessa in, like, fucking rage mode, right? This is M-Bessa when she's, like, fucking going off and she's slaughtering everything around her in, like, a total battle trance kind of thing. This expression feels too much like she's, like, get away from the fridge! Like, she's yelling at one of her kids. Or a neighbor who's, like, putting trash out, like, on the wrong day. Or, like, this feels too... There should be more distortion, more anger, more rage in that expression. I think that's part of it. And then something about the way the head is tilted relative to the flow of the rest of the action pose. It doesn't... I don't think it feels like... This is going to be a very ugly scribble, because I can't really use my tablet for this. But, like... It doesn't feel to me like... Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. It doesn't feel to me like that should be the line of action. Like, I mean, I guess, but then this feels like it should be pushed more. Like, it should be more distorted. Like, she should be breaking her anatomy a little bit more, because this feels too solid. As an action pose, this feels like it is a little bit too static. And they're really trying. Like, I really like what they're doing with the hair here. I like with the way they're playing with the hair in and out of, like, the shadows as, like, this big chaotic mane of madness that's, like, flying absolutely everywhere. I do like that. I think that's cool. And I like, you know, the trace of, like, these chains. I kind of wish there was some little energy tether running through them, though, like, so that they weren't just floating. But, like, I like that. I like that we get this sense, like, she's swung this thing around and she's cleaving through. But again, that line of action... I don't know, I feel like maybe you could do something more like... where you get, like, a sort of a whip shape. Because, like, which way she's swinging it is, like... This implies... that she's going that way, right? Like, that she's swinging it that way. But then the direction of that doesn't 100% comport, because then it's been going, like, this way around. And that doesn't 100% work for me. I feel like if she's pulling it that way, then it should be at least, like... It should be coming around like that. It should be cleaving through them here, maybe, rather? I don't know. Like, something about that swing doesn't clearly communicate emotion to me. It doesn't clearly communicate how she's swinging it, where it's going. And I think maybe that's the thing that's kind of missing from here, is, like... She's clearly in the middle of emotion here, right? Like, this is the middle of an action pose that she's in. I don't know what the action is that she's taking. Because she's not doing anything with this one, right? Like, this one's not detached from anything. It's not currently carving through anyone. She's just kind of holding it up and pointing in a direction. Oh, my model is getting really confused now. She's just kind of holding it up and, like, pointing it outwards. Ooh. It's not the camera tracking that's a problem here. She's just kind of holding it up and doing nothing with it. I don't know what she's supposed to be doing with it. Like, what's the gesture of this, that she's getting ready to slice someone or punch someone? Is she warding off someone? I don't know what she's doing. I don't know what she's doing with her body here in this. Like, what is the action that she's undertaking? I think that's missing. There's another splash art, actually, that might be relevant to bring up here, which is Warring Kingdoms... not Kindred. Riven. Splash art, please. Oh, there it is. This one. Right? Because here, like, this is, like, I think this is a much stronger action pose. Not perfect, but it's breaking the model. It's breaking the anatomy. You know what she's doing, right? Like, you can see this whole tense, curved... She's winding up for a swing with that sword. And there's a few things that could be done to make this a better action pose. Like, I think there's some awkwardness with it. But here, I know what she's doing, right? Like, she's jumped forwards, and she's about to come down with a huge swing of this thing on top of, like, presumably this luckless bastard's head, right? Like, I know what Riven is doing with her blade here, because there's a clear line of action that's telling me so. With M-Bessa here, I don't really know what she's doing. I don't know what, like, because, like, there's a bunch of cool motion going on here, right? You have these lines right here in the background that really sort of, like, push into the space and sort of serve the same purpose as, like, speed lines in, like, a shonen anime action shot, right? I like that. I like that you have, like, the chaos of, like, people falling and, like, shit just happening chaotically around her, but the artist is also taking care to make a space in the center of the drawing where there's not too much chaos around M-Bessa herself to make her the centerpiece, to give a sense of her as, like, this being who's in control, who's, like decimating this space around her to get room, right, for herself, who's dominating the battlefield. I like that. I don't like that I can't tell what she's doing right now. I can't tell which direction she's swinging her weapon. I can't tell what this gesture is about, what she's preparing to do or trying to do. And the tilt of the head, I don't know if it's the lighting. Like, maybe it's because everything in here is so much in shadow that her ear and, like, the neck isn't quite clear. Maybe that's what's confusing the posing for me. But I'm kind of, like, it doesn't 100% work for me up here. And I don't think the action is clear on what she's supposed to be doing, which is a pity. Again, I came into this with much more positive feelings about M-Bessa, I swear to God. And I've sort of landed quite negatively on her, frankly. Because, like, the point of the skin is that, like, the base form is fairly staid, right? Like, the base form is fairly calm. It's not too over the top. It's just M-Bessa with some gold on her, right? Like, there's not that much going on. And then the point is, when she uses her spell effects, that's when she kind of goes Super Saiyan for a second, right? Like, that's when you get all this, like, oh, like, the blood red hair and, like, the sort of the increased contrast between the light and the dark and shit. And that works well enough, but then the spell effects just overwhelm the gold, and it fucks with the whole color profile of the thing. And I think here, actually, ironically, for someone who started the video complaining about gold, it would have been stronger if the gold had been more powerfully visible in the color scheme here. I think the visual effects really detract from it. I really think they do. Huh. Weird. Didn't think I'd land there, but I guess that's where I am. But anyway, those are my unscripted thoughts about the Chosen by the Wolf skin line, I guess. Bye.